Hey guys, Steve here, Ponics. Today we're going to talk about
growing with fishes. Growing with fishes.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 276 with the gentleman from the Periodic Effects. Thanks a lot for joining us at the Growing with Fishes podcast.
Absolutely. Happy to be on with you guys.
We also have our co-host, Marty.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome, Wayne.
Hey, welcome.
And I'm your host, Stephen Reisner of the Ponics podcast. Thanks a lot for joining us, everybody, this evening. We have a really cool episode. For those of you that aren't familiar, the Periodic Effects is a really cool, more medical-oriented podcast. They have a lot of doctors and PhDs and more of those types of people from academia on their show compared to a lot of the other podcasts. I think it'll be a really cool episode for you guys tonight. Also, be sure to check out apmjclass.com if you guys are interested in learning about aquaponic cannabis in a more formal setting. All right. Thanks a lot for joining us this evening. You have a really, really cool podcast. People can find that over at periodiceffects.com. Let me put that up on the screen here for everybody. If you guys aren't familiar, it is one of the better podcasts out there in terms of the science. There's no magic crystal stuff on there or, energy, any of the hocus pocus that you see on some of the other sources out there on information on cannabis. So tell us a little about yourself and how you got started with your podcast. You've been going for you got 253 episodes. You're pretty close to us as well in terms of number of episodes. So you've been doing this a long time, and it's great to see some other people putting out a ton of great content. Yeah,
it's crazy. Time seems to fly pretty quick. I think we started the podcast 2017, so almost 5 years now. And then I originally got into cannabis on the medical side in the Oregon days. So I started an edible company in 2015 and then went through a couple years there and got the rec license when Oregon went recreational. It was like early 2017 and then started the podcast at the same time and really started it because of just being a small, bootstrapped company. So I self-financed the business and we kind of grew off the cash flow we made from the medical days to be able to afford the license and, all the regulations and security system that went along with going rec. And then started the podcast, YouTube channel a little bit later, but really to try to build an audience and just put out, good education and kind of build the brand that way, as we didn't have a lot of extra money to spend on, big advertising or billboards or, some of the other marketing strategies you'll see from the bigger companies. And so that's really why we started it. And then just did it on something that I kind of aligned with and that I enjoy, which is like chemistry and kind of the more science look at things, and just kind of kept that theme. And can't believe it's been 5 years now. Sometimes it feels like yesterday and then sometimes it feels like forever. So.
I know. Marty and I were talking the other day about how it's crazy how quickly time goes by, and then just you don't really realize it when you're just doing an episode each week and kind of that kind of thing. How many episodes you end up doing, and you're like, you look back and you're like, man, how the heck did we get to 200 or whatever?
Yeah, it adds up. And the industry, things change so fast. I think that sometimes it feels like it's been even way longer sometimes, as it's just so much change going on constantly, which I don't think you really, especially with legalization efforts and states and everything that's coming online now. You don't see that in too many other places.
No, it's one of the things I love about cannabis and botany in general. I worked in IT for a while, and that was pretty stale.
Yeah.
It wasn't until another operating system or some other thing came out that you had anything exciting to think about. Whereas in cannabis, there's new stuff every single week,
Yeah. Not going to slow down anytime soon either.
No. You've had a lot of amazing episodes. What are some of the different episodes that you've had along the way that really stood out or more?
Man, we've had so many. I think some of the doctors and I think I've been surprised by some that have been kind of came from anti-cannabis, or they were at least doing the harm focused studies in the past. like even in the 90s, and then to see them now, like how they talk about it, and they're researching like the benefits side of things, and then what was it like behind the scenes. It's kind of fascinating to see like the back end of the war on drugs of people that lived in kind of both areas, kind of from that research and science side. So those, I don't know any specific ones. I mean, we'd go down some rabbit holes that get interesting. I think the one I know for sure is that when we had a celebrity on, we had Jim Belushi on the podcast because he's got his grow in Southern Oregon. And of course, my mom's like the biggest Jim Belushi fan and watched TV shows. So for her, I know that was definitely one of the biggest moments. She liked that one.
He is really popular in the area, so I live pretty close to him.
Nice, yeah.
So he's over in Eagle Point,
Yep.
And he's got a pretty solid sort of love-hate relationship with like most people love him, and then some people really hate him. And I'm sure some of those are just haters that are probably jealous on multiple levels. But of course, everybody wants to, in the grower community wants to sort of come at him, I'm sure. But
yeah, I think.
But he has done some, I'm going to say him. I don't know if it's like actually him, but obviously his company has done a fair amount of outreach in the community, and I think the show has been overall positive. I know he gets pretty crazy on there. But
the TV show, yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, I feel like he's represented himself relatively well in the industry.
Yeah.
And, I think it's been all right. I think it's been good.
Yeah, I think definitely more so than a lot of the celebrity brands that we've seen come through. They're definitely, most are just kind of slapping their name on a white labeled product and then trying to get it into as many stores as possible. So it's cool to see at least someone do it a little different,
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
pretty large operations in Oklahoma out here. So I know that's where most of
the
grows are. So
yeah. No, he's outside of Oregon. I haven't talked to him in a while though. So yeah.
What are some of the more memorable, lesser known cannabinoid or terpene episodes that you've covered? Because you've covered a lot of cool stuff down that space as well.
Yeah. I think I did a series where I went through Dr. Ethan Russo's paper. What was it called? The Usual Suspects and a Few Friends or something like that. I don't know if you guys have seen that paper, but he basically goes through not every, but top 20 cannabinoids, then terpenes. There's like a page or two on each. So I basically read that and kind of added in, thoughts or what I've heard in the industry. I think an interesting one is like beta caryophyllene. Seems to like really mimic like cannabinoids more so than like a lot of the other terpenes. So I think that's interesting and potentially, what those effects could lead to, or, taking lower doses. But if it's high in beta caryophyllene, you're seeing like, stronger effects like you would from a higher THC potentially. I find those pretty interesting. And then it still seems really underdeveloped. Just because when you're talking about like ailment, it's kind of the rec side, but from the ailment side, specific sleep or pain or something, it's really hard to figure out. There's just kind of general categorizations of them, but how much of a certain terpene with another cannabinoid and like what consumption method. I feel like there's just not hardly any clarity on stuff like that,
Yeah, what's always odd to me is that the funkier terpene profiles seem to be the ones that are the most notable when I smoke them. In fact, we just had a strain that I got called Wook Stomper, and it's super high in transneridol and cisneridol, which is super, super rare to have those two as the dominant ones, right? The only time that I've ever seen that. And I had that and beta caryophyllene, I think, are the top three. Which really, really not common, but that thing hits like a freight train. That hits harder than a lot of my dabs do. Just for that, and I love it.
Do they have the percentages of each terpene on there, or was it just showing the top ones?
I can pull it up 1 second.
Yeah.
So that's
an interesting combo. I don't think I've seen that terpene, but I haven't seen it dominant, I don't think, in a strain before, let alone the both of them.
There you go. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, transneridol, beta caryophyllene, limonene, cisneridol, and then human.
Nice. So, decent amount in there too. Yeah. That's a
Again,
good
not the
spread.
highest ever, but
Not bad.
really interesting profile for sure.
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
aquaponic grown as well.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. For myself, I just really go for the citrus smell. There's a few in Oregon that are terpene testing, but it's not required. So you don't always see it on the strains and stuff, but I like terpinolene, limonene, kind of those citrus ones, a little pinene or something. I seem to like more personally.
You also covered THCO recently in one of your episodes. Do you want to touch a little bit about that? I always find that interesting, especially because of the questionable legality on it as compared to all those other synthetic cannabinoids. THCO is the only one that's been prosecuted at the federal level, whereas none of the other ones have, which is why I always warn people about that, because the DEA first found that, what was it, in 1970, I believe it was the first one, but it was originally developed in 1955 by the government. That was their aerosolized version. They were trying to use like a crop duster basically to overspray enemy troops and make them so high they couldn't fight, which is a genius idea in terms of, I think, it's like the opposite of a nuke, right? Just make everyone so high, walk up, take their gun away. Hey, we're good, right? That was kind of interesting. But yeah, what did you find in your episode? Because that was a really cool episode. When I was listening to some of your different stuff the last couple of days for getting ready for this episode, I thought that was great.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. THCO. I did want to ask, do you know what it was at the federal level? I hadn't heard that story. What was it? The prosecution
a couple
case?
People have been prosecuted for manufacturing it.
Interesting. Yeah, I think with that one, I think we titled that episode like THCO, what's the point? And it seemed to pop. I mean, obviously, none of those really would happen, I think, if you just had cannabis access, like your Delta 9, regular THC. So I think it's filling a lot of those markets that don't have a cannabis program, kind of a need there. But it really seemed to pop more than some of the other synthetics because it was apparently more potent, or 4x times as potent. But then who I had on, I can't remember who the guest was, but I remember them saying it was like one study and it was partially, it was only replicated once and it was in a petri dish, I think. And then understanding, like from talking to scientists, when you see that study or some kind of statement like that in the headline, it's like, well, was it done in a petri dish? And then if so, maybe. It was only done once, not multiple times. Again, maybe. But then you move up to like the animal model and then eventually the human, like actual humans consuming it and testing that. So I think it got that headline and that story of being like super potent and just took off with popularity because of that. But I don't know if the evidence was that strong. And then at the same time, if you could just get Delta 9, what's the point of taking a synthetic with potentially other chemicals, or, where's that coming from? There's no regulations really over that side of things on the hemp industry. So you're just taking a huge risk with trying some of that stuff.
This is the first mention of it in writing, was actually from Cannabis Alchemy, the Art of Modern Hash Making, which you can find online. Actually, I'll throw a link in chat if anyone's interested in it, but it's an old book that's out of publication, but this is published in 1970 and they cover the synthesis of it. But I thought that was always interesting to kind of, just as Delta 8's never been prosecuted at the federal level. A lot of these other ones haven't, but THCO is, and it's one of the ones where of all the riskiness of all, that's the one I always tell people to avoid just for that reason.
Yeah. Wasn't there something with it? I don't recall with its processing, but I think it takes a pretty dangerous chemical, like a solvent.
Acetyl anhydride.
Yeah. So it's really dangerous on the production side too. Yeah. So,
but this is the first paper or first book that has it. And
that's interesting.
The cover. There you go.
Oh, cool. Cannabis Alchemy. That was 1970s, you said?
1970.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think the government, discovered it in 55, wasn't it? When they tried to use it, or were testing it. So that's only 15 years later where it really got out into the mainstream, or not mainstream, but at least into the public sphere.
And this goes over a bunch of different extraction methods, ethanol extraction and methanol extraction and a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. But it's, way a lot of stuff that people think of is now also has CBD to THC conversions and other things. So way ahead of its time.
Yeah. That book would be a bestseller if it came out right now with all the hemp businesses trying to figure that
Right.
stuff out. Yeah.
Well, a lot of this chemistry has been like further refined or changed, or you can't get those base ingredients anymore for a slew of different reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, THCO has got a lot of similar ingredients to meth. So there's that.
Yeah. Try to regulate those a little more.
What are some of the other more interesting topics that you got? I always find it's interesting some of the different topics that sometimes when we have guests on, we don't realize that they also know about this other thing. What are some of the other interesting topics that you've had come up on your show over the years?
Let's see. Well, we've done a few episodes outside of cannabis, still like, I guess you'd say plant medicine, but some of the psychedelics, and you got Oregon that's legalizing a medicinal psilocybin program right now that's supposed to come out. Hey, there's a video. And so that's going to be interesting, but some of the brain chemistry of like, especially the endocannabinoid system that we all have in our bodies, and it's like so critical for so many different functions of just everything in the body that happens. And the fact that it was barely discussed or talked about in like medical school over the past, however many decades. And so a system that's so critical in the body, and like you literally couldn't survive without it. If it's not imbalanced, mood swing, like so much, you don't sleep as well, you don't feel healthy, you're not healthy. And then most doctors, like, unless they're interested in cannabis, like barely have heard of this. And we produce our own cannabinoids in our body that are like very similar to phytocannabinoids from the plant. So that's interesting, because if cannabinoids are illegal, everybody's walking around with cannabinoids inside their body. I think some of that stuff about the endocannabinoid system has been pretty interesting to learn about, and the lack of education around it.
So you've had a chance to interview, again, primarily more people with PhDs and an academic background. You've also interviewed some other people that didn't have that background. What do you think is kind of different about your show and kind of the content of your show being much more, I guess, more formal and more academic than a lot of the others? I really appreciate listening to the show for that reason. What are some of the different things that you think kind of makes it stand out? Some of the different things by interviewing those type of people that kind of, adds a lot of additional insight compared to some of the other shows that are out there?
Yeah, it kind of happened organically. So when we started, that wasn't really our focus. We kind of mixed like business and science, and we still do some business episodes, but not very often. And then when we did the science ones, we started at like the base level. So it was like, what is a terpene? What is THC? What is a cannabinoid? And after about a year, I mean, there's still so much to talk about with cannabis, but I felt like we had that base really pretty well known, kind of like what a lot of bud tenders know, or what you might get in training if you started in the cannabis industry. And then from there, it's like, well, we didn't want to keep recovering like kind of the 101 topics. I mean, they're there. If anyone wants to go in the back, catalog and listen to them, they can. And then because I like the science and the chemistry side so much, I was like, well, let's just keep building on top of this. And it was kind of good timing with where the industry is at least in the last couple of years, is that all of these doctors and PhDs are much more like open and fine with coming on like publicly and talking about their research. And there's just way more of it going on. So anytime we see like an interesting study, there was one recently about COVID and CBD, CBD potentially like stopping the replication of COVID or entering the cells or something. So like people talk about that, like, well, the people that did the research, let's see if they'll come on as a guest. And so that's kind of how we find guests and topics now, is just looking for like new papers, studies. And there's just more of it and more of it coming out. And at this point, like we just have like guests lined up, and it's been like finding people to come on the show is the easy part. It's kind of trying to find like legitimate people, because there's also a gray area, of people researching, and some people want to promote a product more than they want to like educate and just talk about the science. So kind of filtering for that, but yeah, just kind of led into itself from starting with that like 101 science type content that we covered.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
that was one of my questions for you is how, have you had a hard time getting in a lot of these more of those types of guests on compared to some of your other guests and business guests, or has that been really easy as far as getting them especially these people putting out white papers all the time? I know sometimes they can get really swamped with
Yeah.
requests.
Yeah. It's surprisingly hasn't been too difficult. Some people we've tried for a while and it just hasn't lined up, but at least we're talking with them. I think a lot of people that are actually, especially like scientists, really focused on cannabis, they're looking for a show, or they don't get requests maybe often to an audience that already knows kind of those 101s that we talked about and like really wants to dive into it, versus if they went on just like a mainstream thing or whatever, it'd be very kind of surface level for them. So maybe they're more interested because of that, kind of a show where we can just sit for an hour and a half and go over it. But yeah, finding guests hasn't been too difficult, but just coordinating schedules and time sometimes is the hardest part.
Also, welcome, Fumidor. How's it going, bud?
Cheers, guys. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you, Wayne. Nice to hear about a new podcast, and I'm happy to hear about your kind of science-oriented podcast and the fact that you have really interesting. We've been talking about. I think Poten and I both have been talking about getting the kind of guests that I think you have regularly on your show. I've been talking about getting them more on my show for sure. I can speak for myself. Most of the time, I get like breeders and stuff like that because I try not to. Tread this fine line basically of turning into like a sponsored show or like an infomercial or whatever else, you know what I mean? Because I literally pay to run the show. I'm not actually paid to run the show.
Yeah.
So it'd be a really strange dynamic. Not to mention, even if I was paid to run the show, like, if it turns into like this whole sponsored thing, people are going to feel it, right? So I'm always trying to have these kind of spontaneous, interesting discussions. And the only people that I could think of to do it was with like breeders and stuff. But you have an even better idea, like the actual soil scientists and plant scientists. And the thing is, like, those people are actually really, really happy to talk to folks that know what they're talking about. Poten and I were over with Dr. Efren Cazares a couple weeks ago, and he was happy as a freaking clam to talk about us or talk about, mycology and everything, because we weren't asking him like, so what's a mushroom, bro? So I dig it. I'm not going to keep talking, but I dig what you're saying. Cheers, dude.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's funny because I've almost slightly tried to stay away from like growing and genetics and breeding because I'm not from that side of it, and I haven't done that. They're still really interested, but sometimes I worry if growers are listening, they're like, you're not asking the right questions, or because I don't know it as well. But like on the body side or the I think we could do a whole episode on like how THC connects to the CB1 receptor, and like we'll have a guest on that's super focused on that and just like spend an hour on like that one question. So it's fun, doing that. It just goes down different rabbit holes and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Shoot, I lost my train of thought. I had a question all queued up, and then I had a bit of a brain fart. So you had a couple of questions that you had. You talked about before we were on air about one of the main reasons why small businesses shut down, about having to do with 280E. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's there's definitely a big conversation of like, especially legacy growers or people that built the industry, and then big money comes in, they're selling that a lot, they can afford to lose a lot of money. They price cut and kind of come in with whatever product they have. And I think there's a lot of times, and I'm a small business, so I like know it from that side. We look at big money and we're like, well, that's the reason all these small businesses fail. And especially we're going to see that in cannabis. Like at this point, it's just good. It is happening and it's going to keep happening. But I think the tax issue at the federal government level is going to be more responsible for killing small businesses than big money coming in at this point. Because like I said, if you're big money, you can lose a lot of money for many years and keep operating. Most of the small businesses, if you lose money for 2 years, a year or two in a row, 3 years, like you're kind of at the end of your rope. And the tax issue, especially dispensaries, but with that tax issue, we're getting taxed like 60 to 80% on our net profit, which is like, I don't think socialist countries are taxed that high. If you go to like the Norway or Sweden or wherever, I think they're like 40, 50%. So Small businesses, that tax just kills you because that's all your money to reinvest. That's all your extra, like it's everything. It's all your, almost all your profit, you know, when you're talking about 70, 80%. It's crazy. And the big company can lose that money for 5 years until the market's washed out and consolidated.
That's pretty much Oregon to a T.
Mm-hmm.
The way it exists right now. And especially with the, you know, the flooded market this year, you know, so many people that, you know, can't survive that are going to take it again this year. So I think you'll see another big drop off in growers, another consolidation of, you know, of growers to even fewer hands.
Yeah. And I think Oregon actually did a good job for, as best I've really seen of like all the states for small businesses, and Washington and like they've done good as well. But when you look at like the East Coast, like the cost of a license, like when they cap the licenses, you know, at a small number, and then you mix in the tax code, like there's no way a small business can even start in that environment. So Oregon at least kept the cost fairly low in comparison. But I mean, that's the federal government tax issue, right? No state can do anything about that until they federally legalize. That won't change until that happens. So, you know, it's a lot of money they're making off it now being federally illegal, which is kind of crazy that it's weird because they, you know, I could still get raided or that cash is made from an illegal source, but the government will take that tax money knowing exactly what I do, the federal government that is. And it's kind of, I don't know, seems like a weird contradiction to me.
Yeah, that's definitely strange, especially with the go ahead, Marty.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember how weird it was to pay taxes back in the Colorado days when rec first went legal, and you know, we had to basically play a shell game with the banks and stuff, and they'd close one of our banks almost weekly, and they'd open another account. We had a guy that was dedicated just
getting bank accounts,
basically.
Crazy.
It's horrible. And they were supposed to give us banking, you know, back, what was the first one that came through was like SB 2050 or something like that.
2014,
no, though that was the original legalization one, I think. And the one that came through afterwards, though, that gave them and established cannabis as an agricultural crop and allowed them to add regulations on government and city levels to the plant itself, and effectively being able to regulate the medical market, which they weren't supposed to be able to do based on the original bill. So I do think it was on purpose. I think all of it's on purpose. They want to consolidate it down. They want to kill small growers, which they've effectively done. You know, it's it's bleak out here. There's a lot of equipment for sale.
Yeah. Seems to be the case everywhere. Well, any state that's been more open or was early to small businesses. Yeah.
Right.
It is kind of you see this kind of over and over again in different states. I saw this in Colorado. You know, you kind of have this huge boom in the beginning, and then year 2 or 3, there's kind of too many businesses, and they kind of weed out the people that aren't that good at it or that don't have the money enough to lose money for a year or two, just like you're saying. And then it kind of thins down the market a little bit. And then they, you know, usually change the regulations a little bit to be a little more strict. And it's kind of the natural evolution of regulation in all these places. But now you're seeing it in California, where it's completely collapsed the market. I mean, was it Mendo's was suspending 85% of the taxes?
Really?
We'll see what the rest of California does, but at least some of the different jurisdictions are starting to move in the right direction in California. But they got to stop seeing this as like a, you know, infinite cash cow. It's just a commodity. Like they really, really can't keep, you know, treating it the way that they have it. I mean, Illinois is even worse on taxes than California. You know, how is their market supposed to survive? You know, and then better yet, compete with the black market. Like, forget it.
Right. Yeah.
Well, why would you buy an eighth for $90 when you can buy it for $35?
It's like Canada. You know, Canada did a terrible job of federally legalizing, which, I mean, all those huge companies, you got like maybe 20 of them, you know, all that money, you know, when you could add small businesses, build up the industry. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if they wanted to do it the right way, they'd go back to the 1 acre cap or 2 acre cap,
set something reasonable
like that, and then have a huge amount of jobs. You know, you have a huge jobs program that would be larger than any other jobs program in the last 50 or 70 years, you know, in the United States.
Yeah. And that would bring in way more revenue. I mean, if they lowered taxes and set some of those kind of things to help small businesses, ultimately it brings them more money because the industry is more built up, more diversified, and it just gets bigger, and people don't go to the black market because they don't need to. People pay a little bit more for tested and quality and packaged, and just that certainty of it, but they're not going to pay triple the price,
Well, not only that, but little people spend their money in their community. The big companies spend their money somewhere else, or don't spend their money at all and just reinvest in some other location in South Africa or something at their new facility. This is something we saw in California too, where at the conference, people were talking about, man, we used to see so much cash being dropped. Kevin Jodry was talking about how the best customers were the cultivators. They were the one buying the baller packs and the crazy rosin and the fresh frozen such and such and the blah, 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 and the jackets and the sweaters and everything else. And that money was filtering basically everywhere. There were basically people buying arts and crafts because somewhere down the line, someone basically bought some weed, sold some weed, whatever, and there was money just sifting down the whole system. Whereas now, the big companies that are taking over the existing production, I mean, there's still obviously weed production in California, they are offshore. They're Canadian companies. They're somewhere else. They're taking their money somewhere else and literally building a new facility somewhere else. And so that money is just vacuumed out of the community. This is something that people always forget about so-called trickle-down economics. It never fucking works. Whereas local economics really works. When you actually literally pay small people to do small projects and so forth, then the money filters around really well and everyone basically does better. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And it's kind of aggravating too when you hear the minimum wage has been a big conversation, like around Portland where we're at. I think they raised it a little bit, but not the whole state. But our minimum, like I hire people starting at $15 an hour, and they're talking about trying to get minimum wage up to maybe 15 in the city, but outside it's not. And every small business I know, when you actually see someone, right, you pay more. And I guarantee, like, my team of employees is way more effective than a big company, but I don't have that massive scale. So I can pay them more because their productivity or whatever you want to call it, it's better than someone at a big corporation, much higher. But, scale is a thing, and buying power. And when you've got, again, tons of money to lose for a while, it's hard to compete with that when you're actually just trying to run a profitable business from the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the market's really changed in so many ways. I mean, fuck. Who would have thought Oklahoma would be leading the way in the industry? Like, what the fuck happened?
That was weird. I was told that apparently one of the key decision makers had a daughter or a cousin that had some kind of illness, and cannabis like saved her, made a huge difference. And he was like, we're rolling this thing open. And it was like, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's what I'd heard. So just someone's
That's
personal
just plausible
experience.
enough to be true. I have to be honest. That's really just plausible enough
Sounds
to be
really
true. There's a
fucking
certain kind of politics in this country whereby if it happened to me, then it's important. Otherwise, what's that?
Yeah. Oklahoma's crazy. Who would have ever thought why like they would have rolled out such a liberal, like open, program to support the industry? Crazy.
That's how literally heartless Dick Cheney supports gay marriage,
Dude, I was just gonna say that. I was gonna say the same thing. Like, until it happens to you, everybody's, can't understand. It's like hard to have empathy. So some of those people, I'm glad they're on board, but I have some questions for them when they come on board. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm glad you're here now, but where the fuck have you been? Kind of situation. So, double-edged sword, I guess.
They're trying to do some more regulations in Oklahoma. They're also trying to pass rec. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think there's a lot of pushback. Right now, everyone's pretty happy with how things are. So it's like,
let it ride. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, arguably, they've had way better success with their sort of very open policies than other states have had with their extremely restrictive ones. Everyone is, waiting for it to collapse with the overload and everything else. And there's not, obviously there's a huge infrastructure that exists already in Oregon and California and all the, like it took Colorado even longer to sort of implode before, the other ones, I feel like they matured a lot faster because there were so many people just already growing here, like simply, just created a huge amount of influx. But yeah, I do think that they've arguably, if you're just looking at it from the numbers perspective, that Oklahoma has done far better in terms of maintaining a stable market than any of the other states so far.
on that, a legalization in South Carolina formally passed a thing. I think it has to go through one more round of voting, but it looks like it's going to pass for medical in South Carolina.
Really?
That's going to be a great one as well.
Yeah, I wonder when the federal legalization is going to happen. And like, I think the biggest concern now is the people that have maybe opened up to it, or like if that person in Oklahoma, that key decision maker, was the reason that opened up like that, like who's deciding federal regulations? There's a couple like organizations now, and some of the bigger MSOs are kind of like leading that conversation. It seems like to me. So, is the federal government going to let the states kind of build the industry up, or are they going to put some like sweeping black and white rules in place that potentially make things even worse?
I would love to see a federal 2-acre cap, but that ain't gonna happen.
Yeah. No, that's not gonna happen.
I don't know what's gonna happen. I think that if we don't, like, collectively as a community, like, just get our shit together, stop infighting, and pool our money in for some lobbyists in DC, like it's like critical that we do that in the next few months and figure out a way that we can work together with a bunch of different communities to make that happen financially. I think, and you maybe even do get a bunch of breeders together, figure out some kind of solution to that, because that's the only way we're going to win that fight. You see this over and over again, where, the people that are the lobbyists are getting in the, whispering in the ears of the politicians, and the people that are getting what they want. So that's the solution.
It's hard to organize like growers or anyone in the industry, because everyone's like competing at the same time, and then it's not centralized in a few companies. I almost wonder if like a patient group could fight for small businesses or the small growers, because they are directly affected by that, and the medical regulations that are going to come out after federal legalization, is like an indirect way, like support them, donate there, where they're kind of, not tied to a specific company, but maybe their voice and would be listened to more, because people have soft spot for patients, as they should. So I don't know, it's hard to figure out how that could be done or won. I guess big money.
We need a Mandalorian style growers guild.
Yeah.
Did you ever take your mask off?
Are you asking me?
No, the Mandalorian's never supposed to take his mask off.
Oh.
So in our growers guild, we're supposed to have some rules.
Oh, I see.
Gotta have rules, right? For guild.
Yeah. I got it now.
So tell us about yourself and some of the different things that you do aside from the podcast in the cannabis community, because you do a bunch of cool stuff as well.
Yeah, it's from the like career business side, it really is. Yeah, in the business podcast and those things, like that's pretty much all of my days. But outside of that, just being in Oregon, like a lot of outdoors, I grew up like skiing. I actually grew up in the Midwest, where there's like our local ski hill was a trash dump that they covered with dirt and put a chairlift on. But now that being on the Northwest is like amazing out here. So it's pretty much work most of the day, and on the weekends try to go up to the mountain in the winter, or ocean or rivers in the summer, and keep repeating that cycle. It's been working so far, so it's good to be in an area where you can get out. Portland's pretty small city, I guess, in comparison, but like an hour drive, you're at a ski resort or something. So it's pretty nice to be out here.
Yumi runs a cannabis tasting society there in Portland. You have to come by and
maybe it'll start up. I was just talking to somebody today. We're losing the mask mandates in the end of March, so I'm like, man, we might actually start doing events. Yep. Yeah. Of course, there'll be some new fucking variant that comes along. This is the face eating variant or some shit.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, that's not going to happen. We're going to open right back.
Yeah, back to getting the masks off. Yeah,
it's going to be weird to be back to normal, right? It's been so fucking long. Like
it
2
was.
years.
There wasn't there like a period of like 3 weeks or something? I remember.
Right.
I'm like, did we already take the mask off once? And then
we did once, and then put it right back on.
Yeah.
I don't even think it was 3 weeks. I think you're right. It was like 2.5, 3 weeks tops.
Or something.
Right
I just got used to it again, like having it off, like walking into a store.
Yeah,
and then I had to get right back. So.
Well, there is end in sight, hopefully.
Yeah. We found the only open cannabis lounge in all of Portland when I was there a couple weeks ago.
Flight Lounge.
It's fun.
And the owner is a woman gamer. That was hilarious.
Nice.
She was
Just sitting there
awesome.
waiting to slam on Battlefield, I think. Anyway.
Did they have gaming set up, like TVs and
They
stuff?
did, yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
that's cool.
I think they have, I want to say they have like VR and stuff, yeah.
Oh, no
They're
shit.
trying to get people to come in and just kind of chill for the whole day,
I might have
or a few
seen
hours.
that. Do you know the name of that one?
Flight Lounge, yeah, it's all right. It's a small place. I mean, it's a nice place. It's on the smaller side, but they can still fit like I think they were telling us like 20 or 40 or 50 people. It'd be a little bit crowded with like 50 people,
Yeah.
but it's like a whole. I think they have an Airbnb upstairs. I don't know how many units, maybe 1 or 2 units, and then downstairs
cool.
basically is like the lounge area. They used to have another location over on. I don't quite remember, but anyway, somewhere over by Foster. But I guess they can close that one down. So.
They're on
Interesting.
60th and Sandy now.
Right next to Floyd's or Lloyd's Cannabis, which is
Oh,
actually
yeah.
one of the cheaper places to get cannabis around town. They have like $5 eighths and stuff. So It's
Yeah.
crazy when I see those signs.
I know. Yeah.
For eighths. Man.
Right? Doesn't that blow you away? And someone says like a $90 eighth, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I mean, he said that. I believe you because I've heard of these prices from Illinois, like just these bonkers
Insane.
prices.
Yeah.
$90 for an eighth. That means that it would cost me like $45 per joint.
Yeah.
Or at least if I rolled a small one, I would end up probably rolling small ones
Better-
for that kind of fucking cost.
It
I
better
would end
be
up having
damn
to pay
good.
$30 joints. Yeah.
Yeah.
$30. But $30 joints of basically dispensary weed, which is
And I bet you
it
the
is what it is.
quality
We've talked
quality
about
is
it.
probably shit too. You know.
That's
'cause
it.
there's
Yeah, I
no
didn't want to say
competition
that
out
out
there.
loud, but yeah, it's basically
Yeah.
going to be pretty swaggy, and it's going to cost me $30 per joint.
Nah.
Not to mention, I regularly smoke a quarter a day, so that would cost me 100 and fucking. I don't even want to
No.
count anymore. I don't want to count that much money.
There's a weird. There's,
Every day of my life, I'd have to smoke that much. That would be ridiculous.
there's a weird like kind of ironicness to it though, is that those states like Illinois that do that, big money's gonna move in. They think it's lucrative. They're all gonna
Right.
get destroyed. Just like Canada,
Right.
every one of those publicly traded companies is going under.
got slammed.
Like, they've been going under. Yeah, but they lose like 150 million a quarter or something. It's insane. And
What
meanwhile,
What is it? What's the disconnect then? What do you think?
They didn't have any cannabis growers in them. That was the problem. They had a
Right.
bunch of kids
Right.
they hired that had horticultural degrees, and none of them knew how to grow weed. And you saw this over and over again. One of those large operations, I don't remember, if it was Canopy or Aurora, got wiped out because they double dosed nutrients in a day. Because one head grower, they had 2 head growers, and
Yeah.
both of them dosed the place. You had another one that was built directly next to an airport, and no one put the thought through on the HVAC as to make sure that it would handle the airplane exhaust, right? So like this is like really basic shit that like any experienced cannabis greenhouse person would have thought, or had procedures that would have prevented either one of those from happening. This is just crazy. It's like
But
really.
what was it? They were too
shit.
cocky and from a business mindset, or what was it? They weren't receptive to weed
No,
growing?
they-
Because I have heard that they basically were very many of these corporate types, the suit types, were very unreceptive to traditional grower types because they thought that they were just I don't know, black market pirates or something. Was that basically it, or was it something else?
Yeah, basically they kind of look down on the cannabis culture and they think we don't know anything because we have dreadlocks or whatever else, and then they kill a few crops. I took over. I'm not going to name the company, but I took over operations temporarily for one of the larger Canadian operations up in the Toronto area after they had 4 failed runs before
Jesus.
I did with the company that had built it. How do you fail 4 times in a
I
row?
don't understand.
Like,
yeah.
I can't fathom that. Like, I just.
It's not that hard to grow
Ow.
weed. Yeah, it blows my mind.
yeah.
I mean, was it synthetic? What were they doing? Was it aquaponics, synthetic?
With
What?
aquaponics. Yeah.
Well, I could see fucking up an aquaponics system, but that's so, I don't know, it's so brazen to basically build out an aquaponics setup if you don't know what you're doing, or if you didn't have somebody on staff that knew
Well,
what they were
there's
doing.
companies that are all too happy to
Build it out for you.
blow a ton of smoke up your asshole. That's the problem. In fact, about 40% of my yearly work is unfucking other people's systems or stuff that was just they were told completely wrong on how to manage it for either pest management wise or nutrient wise.
Do the people that tell them wrong things, because I think we've had these conversations a little bit, maybe behind the scenes, but do the people who give this wrong advice just continually perpetuate that wrong advice? Do they never get called down on it?
I mean, it's not even that. A lot of the academic stuff in the field is wrong, right? Compared to like commercial production. And now that we're doing so much in cannabis, we actually have the extra money to do a little bit of R&D that the lettuce guys have never had the money to do. And because with cannabis, we're testing for all these secondary metabolites and essential oil production and all this other stuff, we can quantify the health of the plant in a way that you simply can't do with like lettuce or brassicas or some of this other stuff. So we can really dial in, you know, the happiness of the plant and the health of the plant based on quite a bit of those different things.
Yeah, I think they also, I don't know, those states where they don't have a legacy growing industry, they start up, and I think those East Coast states, like they're either afraid of this big industry that's like so scary, so they hyper regulate it, cap the growers to 10 or 20, thinking, well, that only means multimillionaires will come involved, or maybe they're friends with some of these business people that want to get in, and they're like, well, what's better than a monopoly, you know, or an oligarchy where there's very few players. But I think it just straight backfires, and then they want to like increase policing to get the black market out of there. And it's like, just make a reasonable system. You don't have any of these fucking problems, you know? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's definitely one of the bigger problems with the market today, for sure. We'd also talked about, you know, why CBD products look the same and why a lot of them don't work. Do you want to touch on that? I know a lot of the people don't know how to dose or properly dose lots of different units. The other thing is the different carrier oils that people bind them with, they don't understand how to make them still bioavailable. So they might do a really good job of binding them in the oil. That oil is going to go right through you instead of in you. And a lot of people screw that chemistry up a lot as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you're exactly right on those things. And then the other thing that you see in the industry, I think because of the Farm Bill, and it kind of went straight to federal legalization, where in cannabis, you know, there's so many small businesses like making their own products. And hemp, now, if you're a brand or you want to come online, you just white label, like with a co-packer, contract manufacturer. Like big companies have set up with infrastructure, like you see in like food and beverage type stuff. If you want to make a drink, you know, eventually at some point you're probably like hiring a bottling company or someone else that like does it for you. And so that sprung up in hemp. So basically, I think I would say like 90 to 95% of the products I see are just a white labeled like tincture with CBD isolate in it, because those huge companies that add like a functional ingredient, well, they want pure powder that's 99.9% pure that they can control and easily make, you know, the same dosage in a product and make, you know, hundreds of thousands of them, millions of them. So it's kind of crazy. Like in cannabis, there's such a respect for like craft and like quality. And then on the hemp side, it's like almost not that it's not being respected by the consumers, but there's no businesses, very few like on the hemp side that are actually making a good product. And again, with craft, like certain things like coffee craft is like could be subjective, but with cannabis, like if you're just getting a CBD isolate, there's a big difference between that and like a little bit of THC. Like we just looked at your terpene profile from that strain you found. If that strain only had THC isolate sprayed on it and that's all you were smoking, like who gives a shit? There's no craft, you know, to any of that. And so it's so many of the CBD companies, like most of them are just putting their label on it, someone else making it, and they're all making it just with CBD isolate, which I think kind of turns a lot of people off. They try the shit and they're like, that didn't work, or this is a fad, or this is snake oil. And it's like, well, the product you got was snake oil, but doesn't mean the actual plant or the industry can't be legitimate, you know? It's crazy to see.
You see this a lot with the CBG and the Delta 8 buds. It's basically 9 times out of 10, it's low quality CBD, and then they just spray it with whatever cannabinoid that they want it to hit on, and then, you know, get it tested and away they go.
I heard a crazy story that a lot of the black market stuff going to like the East Coast is basically hemp sprayed with Delta 8, because, and the reason why that's happened, like, so I heard someone say over 90%, that number seems really high, but what the reason why is, like, the hemp you can grow obviously legally. So they grow the hemp, they make the CBD isolate, which is legal to make, and then they convert that to Delta 8, and they can move like CBD isolate or even Delta 8 to different states. They can get that to the East Coast, and they just take their hemp, spray it with the Delta 8, and you didn't have to move truckloads of cannabis across the state, which you could get, arrested for crossing state lines. So I found that interesting that, they were saying a lot of the bigger operations are just growing hemp. They get it to the East Coast and then they have their isolate, they convert it and spray it there. And it's way more effective cost wise and then like risk wise. So I heard that recently. I haven't bought black market, being in Oregon, I haven't bought black market weed in fucking forever. But, if you're on the East Coast or some of those other states, like, I don't know, that sounds a little risky too.
It's
crazy.
I was down in Dallas and we went to a Delta 8 dispensary, and you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference between that and some of the Oklahoma dispensaries, and had a consumption area in the back, and it was like, I hope they end up doing this when they fully legalize. It's really nice to be able to buy some shit, sit out back with a bunch of other stoners. They had like a DJ on Saturday nights and stuff. It was cool.
Yeah. That's what we need, like that experience or part of the industry. And then on the hemp side, like some kind of regulations or guidance or something, cannabis is like overdone and hemp is like way underdone. It's ridiculous how different the two markets are. Yeah.
Well, one's extremely profitable and one is not as profitable. So I think that, anymore they can't. Here in Oregon, they did a significant amount of what I would call double dipping, because they took a shitload of tax dollars and they from growers, and then on top of that, still went back and took a bunch of funds to go bust quote unquote illegal grows, and then refused to answer a bunch of questions about what made at least certain grows illegal. Like some of them are obvious and involved in human trafficking and other things, which always pisses me off. Like the local media is always like calling them growers, which are also human traffickers. Like, why aren't they human traffickers that are also growers? Like to me, it just seems like the reason that they're getting busted and arrested should be that they're trafficking humans, not the focus being on the fact that they were also growing cannabis.
Yeah.
So to me, that's like the frustrating part of the double dipping, is they'll even allow a lot of these grows to exist up until they sell a little bit, so they know cash is on hand, and then swoop in when they can pick it up. They don't want to rip plants out of the ground. That's not what they want to do. What they want to do is wait till they make a couple sales and have some cash on hand, because then it can go right to their budget. Anything they seize in cash that's related to drug deals, whether it's cannabis or hemp sprayed with Delta 8 or meth or heroin or whatever, any cash they seize, they can go right into their budget. So to me, that's like double dipping. You're already extorting us for tax money, and then coming back at whoever you want to for various reasons. Obviously, like I was saying, some of them probably deserve to be taken down, but not necessarily all of them. And there was they had a whole task force dedicated to it in Southern Oregon this year, which was really sad to see.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, the hemp growing down there is in Northern California. I mean, it's cool. Like we need that industry too to grow up, but and be available. But yeah, it's a tricky like transition situation. You're never going to get it all right, but there's certain scenarios where you're like, that's definitely not the right way to do it. Yeah.
You also have a lot of CBD smokable flower is quite expensive in terms of per pound compared to a lot of the THC markets right now. I know in California, if you grew that, you could get almost more than THC in a lot of cases, as long as it tests right. So definitely something else where you wouldn't think that a year ago.
Well, it goes back. It's funny that you say that too. It goes back to that craft point of like people in the cannabis industry actually cared about the product. I think a lot of those growers grew shit crops and just processed a CBD isolate. They didn't care about the flower, what percentage it even had. They were putting like biomass, right? Like thousands of tons just to get CBD isolate out. So I think it's funny. The CBD isolate side is so oversat. I mean, that stuff is so cheap now, but to buy craft hemp, which is where the CBD came from originally, is expensive, but the CBD isolate itself is like dirt cheap now. It's kind of funny.
What is it, like 400 or 500 a key now?
Yeah, maybe less. I had 300. Yeah.
Oh wow, it's really come down.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's funny.
Oh.
Yeah, and year before, a bunch of people grew a whole bunch of it that they couldn't even sell. It's like you just see these flip-flopping of markets that happens in any of these heavily regulated or in some cases like the hemp market, perhaps under-regulated. You just see an imbalance and a flip back and forth, which is really just probably indicative of people trying to make money. Again, most of those small growers trying to survive. A bunch of them switched to hemp and then couldn't sell it, switched out, and bounced. Just people trying to make money. But I think the important thing is that I firmly believe we would be better off and have a more stable market, not only for consumers and patients, but also for growers, if we just had more of an open system similar to Oklahoma that wasn't nearly as limiting, specifically on the medical side of things. I just think we need a lot of balancing, and it doesn't seem to be trending in the right direction. We seem to be getting more on medical. They're trying to, I don't know if they did or not, but they were trying to take our tax break away, which is like one of the, so you basically, for those of you who don't know, you don't have to pay taxes if you're a medical patient in a dispensary. You can show them your card and not have to pay taxes. That was one of the few benefits of actually getting and registering for the card that it takes. It's like $400 or probably $500 by the time you pay for the appointment to go to the doctor and give them all the records they need and put everything down. That you're probably spending $500 to really just grow 2 additional plants per year than rec allows you to. Really wasn't worth it for a lot of people, so they saw a huge decline. And now that they're taking the tax break away, I know they were at least trying to. I don't know if they have yet. Maybe they have, maybe they didn't. But that just kind of tells you where their mindset is. Just the fact that they're trying to, take whatever's left. I think they want the program to die, so they don't have to deal with it anymore.
Yeah. They look at it like if it's not making them money. I mean, that's 20%. If you don't, that's what patients should get. To at least that 20% off. But it's crazy if they take that away.
Get it for free. Like before rec, it was just a £2 a year was standard.
So also, we're talking about full spectrum products. Do you want to touch on that?
I think full spectrum is interesting. Like on the cannabis side, people are a lot more educated, but it's kind of back on the hemp side again, and it's again, with all the white labeling companies, you see broad spectrum a lot, which means they removed the THC from it, or full spectrum, which means it's supposed to have, potentially a little bit of THC, that like 0.3% that they have for the hemp rule. But what I've found interesting is like back to craft products versus like these mass produced ones. Every product that I've seen labeled as full spectrum as a hemp product, it doesn't show the THC amount on the label. It just says in the back, like really small print, less than 0.3% due by federal law. And I found that interesting because we started in cannabis industry and then we went to the hemp side and did that as well only a couple of years ago. But coming from cannabis, like you're telling me you've got THC in that product, but you're not telling me how much is in there, so less than, it could be 0 or it's more, but I found that kind of crazy to see on the hemp side that there's full spectrum hemp products out there, but I haven't seen a single one that will list and actually show you the amount of THC that's in the product. So I think it's the hemp side again, its own beast, but the marketing of it and, full spectrum, broad spectrum, just so many terms that get thrown around, which I think turn a lot of consumers off that could find a benefit or be helped, especially if they're not in a state with a cannabis program. But I found that kind of crazy. It's just, I guess, the lack of regulation and guidance around that too. But it seems crazy to me to say there's THC in this, maybe 0, maybe some or more, but I'm not going to tell you how much THC is in it. And that's like the norm. That's what almost all the products are doing. So I thought that was crazy to think about.
They don't have the terpenes usually either, which
no.
You're going to advertise the full spectrum. Tell me what's in it.
That or broad spectrum, which at least, people that might be worried about failing a drug test or maybe scared of THC. Okay. So you put in broad spectrum, but you still don't show the terpene, like what made it broad spectrum. It's like just a marketing term now that's being pretty widely used on the hemp side, but nothing behind it, no verification, no testing. So it's kind of, I don't know. Cannabis industry has done a lot of things right. I think because people are educated that this built the industry. But seeing like the hemp side is like a bunch of chickens with their head cut off running around in comparison, Yeah.
So do you have any interesting content coming up on your show? Maybe stuff that you have recorded that you don't have up yet, or any maybe guests that you have booked that you're excited that's coming up that people can look forward to?
Nothing that's recorded or booked right now. Ironically, like we probably maybe have at most 1 or 2 episodes recorded like in the hopper. I almost always just record and then upload like within a day or two. So we start with like every Monday, get an episode, and now we're like at least once a week there'll be something, and sometimes there's 2 a week. So nothing recorded, but I do that paper I mentioned about COVID and CBD. We reached out to the researchers on that paper, and so we're hoping, we haven't got anything scheduled, but I really want to have them come on, just because COVID on its own is such like a hot button like thing to discuss. But what I like about like our show is like, regardless of if you have a political perspective on it, like what did this paper find? How was it studied? Like what's the certainty? Was it a petri dish, an animal model, like I just asked those questions. And so I think it would be interesting to take like such a sensitive topic like COVID, but just go like on the science and what they discovered with CBD around COVID. And I've gotten this article emailed to me by like people back in Michigan and like some seniors and elderly people. And so I think that recent article, I don't know if you guys saw it or kind of made a splash for a few days, that might have increased sales in the hemp industry like a decent amount. I heard people saying like my aunt's like wants to get CBD now for COVID just in case or something. I'm like, interesting. Yeah, maybe that got some traction.
It was CBGA and CBDA, I think it was, were the 2.
Oh, was that in the paper? Okay.
Yeah, in the paper, yeah. And so what's interesting is it's and THCA, I think as well, was the other one. But what's interesting is it was the acid form, right? So you wouldn't want to combust it. So you would want to take that as an edible or some kind of other thing like that. You wouldn't want to heat it because that would, break it down. Yeah. So that was the interesting finding. But what's interesting is that's not the only time they've had findings on this in cannabis. There was also the canflavin B was found by the Taiwanese government, or the Thai government rather, not Taiwanese, the Thai government, when they did a study of all the plant compounds that were helpful for cannabis treatment. It was a flavonoid in cannabis called canflavin B. Was the most useful compound of all the compounds and all the plants they tested in the whole country. So
yeah, the flavonoid, those things are, I mean, there's all these other components to the plant that are interesting, and like nobody tests, we talk about terpenes, like we kind of expect it if I'm going to buy a strain or something, but I don't know, maybe I should expect flavonoids as well or something else, but nobody's looking at those other areas really either. Yeah. And who knows what was lost to like genetic, like breeding from the black market days, if something was high in flavonoid, why would you keep that? You didn't know that necessarily. You wouldn't keep that strain around. So there's probably a lot of stuff that was lost or could come back, but yeah, I guess it's got to slowly grow with time.
I was thinking about that too with the super stinky strains. You don't really have that kind of heavy stink anywhere, and it wasn't really good for black market people to have a super stinky strain. Right. That was more risk, right? Not only for growing, but distribution, right? So while it was really good to have for smoking, like that was definitely a downside to that product. So it's definitely something I think that we've bred some of these lines out, and you certainly see it with the skunk. I don't remember the last time I smelled anything that smelled like what I remember in high school. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Could have been. There's some movie, I think it's Will Ferrell. I can't remember what it's called. It was like 10, 15 years ago. And this guy's got like this white powder and it's like cannabis. So it's like THCA isolate or something. And he brings in the drug sniffing dog and he's like, see, the dogs can't detect it. And it's like this new technology in the movie. Right. And everyone's amazed, like, how can the dog not smell like cannabis, but it was just the cannabinoids, which are scentless when they're purified. So a similar thing, right? Like if you can't smell it. Yeah. When you're trying to evade dogs or drug sniffing dogs and things like that, that like changes literally the market. And then in the future, now we legalize, well, we're kind of building off what we ended with, the genetics that were available in the last 10, 20 years. So who knows what was changed or lost, during the war on drugs.
We heard some funny stories about that at the Regen conference. Folks were talking about how they allegedly might have sneaked through, one or two different places because they had the wrong kind of smelling weed, allegedly. Because drug dogs, from what I understand, if I remember right, are keyed into caryophyllene and myrcene, I think. And so, and almost all cannabis has either one or the other or both. But there are some strains that have neither nor. So that's kind of funny, right?
Yep. You can look and test for that. Yeah, which makes sense. If you're going to train a dog, it can't smell 100 different components, right? So they picked a few of those most common terpenes and trained them on those, which is really what they're sniffing out. So take some black pepper what's in your pocket or something. Yeah, they'll do set them off as well.
What you do, you have like a relative or something that just
Trick on them.
spray their luggage with those.
Yeah.
Let them have fun every time they go through the airport.
Yeah, that'd be a fun game to play. It'd be a good prank.
Most of the drug dogs don't actually hit on cannabis anymore.
No.
Too many different states now allow it and stuff like that. So there's only a handful of places where you're going to find them. I think I've told everyone my story in Zimbabwe when the dogs didn't hit on the seeds. They weren't too happy about that at the airport. But we imported seeds and they were inspecting them, and the dogs weren't detecting it, and they were not happy about that.
Really? That's funny. Yeah, there's no terpenes in the seeds, so you're good. But the terpenes are in that environment, so they could probably get the smell on them, or maybe that's why they're thinking they'll detect them. But they don't know. They probably think if the dog barks, it proves that the seed is a cannabis plant, right? You can't tell that from smell. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Anyways, there's all kinds of funny things. There's a story that I think I'll wait a little bit longer to tell one day. I told Fumidor knows the one I'm talking about.
Too close in time.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago, and I have to go back to that city here before too long, so I don't want to mention it. But there was a close call in a certain city where they opened up a very terpene-heavy compound and didn't realize what it was. That was pretty entertaining.
Yeah,
it was cologne. So.
Oh, really? That's hilarious. Hey, guys, I gotta bounce in like 5 minutes.
Sure.
I gotta go run to something, but got a little extra time. If there was anything else we wanted to hit on, or
why don't you tell us everybody about how to find you and your website, and how they can check out some of your awesome content.
Yeah. The Periodic Effects is the name of the podcast. So that's the website, periodiceffects.com. Any podcast app, our YouTube channel as well, same name. So you can go there. We did build a tool. If you go to periodicsearch.com, it's right at the top of the website, a link to it. So we built this tool with a developer. So we've done, going on 250, 300 episodes. It's this tool, when you type in, it's almost like Google, but it searches the subtitles of every episode we've ever done. And then it brings up the videos with what you're looking for. And then when you click on them, it starts playing right at the point in the video where that's being said. So if you typed in like CBN or, cannabis for sleep or anxiety or something like that, is because what we got was like people would reach out and be like, hey, I'm interested in this science topic with cannabis. Have you covered it? And then, it's been doing it 5 years. I'm like, yeah, we have. I just don't know where it's at in some episode from 3 years ago. So we built this tool where you can like find, really quickly and easily, like any specific stuff we've covered in the past. So that's a huge educational tool. We share that with a lot of bud tenders and stuff. And then the business side is periodiccaramels.com is our hemp side. And then Periodic Edibles is the cannabis side. So probably for most listeners, periodiccaramels.com, it's hemp. So we can ship across state lines, direct to consumer. For most states, I think that we only ship to like 42 states. There might be 8 we can't ship to. But those are kind of the brands. And then, mostly podcast is probably the best place to follow, or if you're interested in the science side and a lot of the educational content we put out. Yep.
Thank you so much. It was awesome having you on the show.
Yeah.
I enjoyed checking out your podcast. I've listened to quite a few episodes, and I wanted to try to get you on because you do have a very different podcast than most of the other ones out there, and I always like to try and turn our audience into other good sources of information. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. And I should have you guys on. It'd be cool to interview you too. I'm really curious about your story of, starting this podcast and someone that started something 6 years ago in the cannabis industry and still going. I'm sure there's a lot of fascinating tales. So we'll have to have you on sometime soon as well.
That'd be great, man. Appreciate it so much. And
Awesome.
again, thanks for doing all the awesome content you do. And everybody be sure to check out his podcast over at the Periodic Effects. It's a really, really good source of information that isn't bro science. There's so much bro science and high times kind of stuff out there. It's nice to have a good source that's heavily vetted and you put a lot of effort into it. So thanks a lot for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. You have a good one. I'll talk to you later.
Cheers.
Bye.
That was awesome. It's always good to have other podcast people on. I have a couple of other podcasters that we're going to have on the next couple of weeks. But next up, who do we have on next week? Hold on a second. Also, there's a small chance we're going to have to move next week. I got a jet off to Puerto Rico. I know Boo is me. So hopefully we'll have it. We'll have Pride of Lions Seeds on, which will be a lot of fun. He's a super cool guy. We hung out. Sorry about the cat in the back. We had a super cool time with him out at the Regen conference, and we're excited to have him on the show. He's a very nice guy and does a lot of awesome seeds. We get a bunch of autoflowers from him that I'll be popping, and I don't normally grow autos, so I'm excited. But how's it going, Fumi? What's new with you,
man? What's new? I don't know. Same old. Been working on the Regen conference. It's a bit of why am I it sounds so loud today? I don't know. Something's wrong with the audio today. But anyway, perhaps it's just in my ears. Just working on that, doing different stuff, catching up on all kinds of different stuff. Funny how being gone or out of town or whatever for 5 days can like set you back somehow, like all kinds of different ways. It's funny. But anyway, so catching up on all kinds of different stuff. But I don't know. I guess that's not that exciting. Same shit, different day. Whatever.
Yeah, I've been. I got a big operation. I've been doing a bunch of projections for and a bunch of engineering for out here. So that'll be cool later on when I can start showing you guys that. It's about 45 minutes from where I'm living, so it's not too far, not too close. And then also just have a bunch of cool stuff. Going to be hanging out with Jordan River again here beginning of March. He's coming out. We're going to do some more filming and stuff. That'll be fun. We have the Regen conference at the end of the month. That'll be awesome out in Michigan. Looking forward to seeing everybody out there. It's always a lot of fun out at Grow Green MI. It's a really cool spot, and you guys are always super awesome out there in Michigan. Looking forward to seeing a lot of you guys and out there. What else coming up? Working on some of the Regen stuff, just editing up some of the video stuff a little bit and trying to organize all that stuff on my computer. At least just a little bit that I have on that stuff. And then, I don't know, just kind of swamped to work right now. I have a project in Oregon as well I'm working on. That'll be a mushroom and plant project as well. So they're going to be going for their psilocybin application here in November, December, whenever that application process opens up. So I'm super stoked on that as well. Kind of fun to step into that realm here on the legal side of things.
It's certainly fun, yeah. I think a lot of folks that we know would be really excited to work on mushrooms. I think honestly a guy like Coot would be more excited to work on mushroom project than on a cannabis project, that's for sure.
Yeah.
If you were to bring him back like Al Pacino, thought I was out, but they pulled me back in.
Right.
Wouldn't it be funny to see Coot do that too? Because he's a fan of The Godfather.
Fire inspector shows up.
He might not be a fan of The Godfather 3 though. A lot of Godfather fans consider that to be not part of the Godfather series. Now that I think about it, Godfather 3, aka Godfather what?
Yeah. So yeah, we're working on some cool projects down that space here and at the end of the year, and then hopefully be off to Jamaica at some point in the next couple of months for a week or two as a project on there I'll be working on. So I got a lot of traveling and a lot of cool places to run off to. I think at some point next week I'll be in the Caribbean, which will be nice. At least a few days to relax for a minute, but also work. It's a work trip, but you always get 1 or 2 days to fuck off. So excited about that.
Not too shabby. Well, right on.
And then what else? We just have a bunch of cool guests lined up. We have Mean Gene and Mendocino lined up for the when is he on the 2nd of March or 3rd of March? And then we have Jackson Gross, who's the head of UC Davis's aquaculture and aquaponics program, coming on. So he's a really cool guy. He works on a lot of really cool projects. They have one where they're doing like abalones and urchins, and selling the roe from the urchins and growing seaweed and doing like aquaponics with the abalone production. It's really, really dope. And a bunch of just like really cool, weird chemistry stuff with aquaponics. So excited to have him on and talking to us about, what UC Davis is working on as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then we have some other cool guests lined up after that. So also be sure to check out the Regenerative Conference. I should probably pull that slide. Hold on. Sorry, I'm a little bit tired today. I've been working like crazy this week, so I'm a little bit tired. All right, here we go.
Tentatively, I think I'll be in Michigan as well. We'll see.
Nice. Hell yeah. We got Kevin Jodry, Susan Maynard Evans, Chris Trump, Eric Branstead, Joshua Steensland, myself, Dr. Elaine. We have Wade Laughter via video. And we have a whole bunch of other awesome breeders, tons of local breeders from Michigan. We have some other cool local speakers as well. Those are all up on the Instagram over on Dutch Blooms or Regenerative Cannabis on there. You can check out the conferences, and again, it's 3 days of education. You can hang out. Most of the speakers are there for the whole conference, and it's a really, really cool experience to have all these wonderful and experienced growers and breeders at this event, and a huge seed swap on Sunday. So if you have looking for seeds, or you're looking for certain things, you also get seeds as well, I think, as part of your ticket. I don't remember, but you certainly have that awesome seed swap on Sunday to get all kinds of goodies. I know we both got quite a few things there on Sunday, so, and I always get a lot of cool stuff. Just bring something to trade. Everybody's got something that they got a little bit extra of. Just bring what you can, and you'll have a good time. All right, and then you guys can also find us at apmjclass.com. Sorry, I'm just tired today, guys. Here we go. So you can check out this class. Marty and I have 2 live sessions every month, and then we also have over 700 slides of content. We're adding new content all the time. We have an insect guide, pest management slides, all kinds of awesome resources on there, all the test kits that you need, all the different stuff that you need to actually get started and get going and fine tune what you're doing. Check it out if it's kind of the education that you're looking for. And I'm tired today, so I think we're going to wrap the show unless you have anything else that you want to mention.
No, man, I don't have any great ideas for the show. Suddenly I'll whip a rabbit out of the hat, like song and dance routine and stuff. Not today. Yeah, exactly. No, none of that.
You want to tell everybody how to
Monty, all that
find,
kind of stuff.
you want to tell everybody how to find you and your site and stuff?
Easiest way, simplest and easiest way, ladies and gentlemen. Let me see, that's not the right tab to open, but I could open up a new window right here. Come join me over at the website that I built. Actually, that's kind of strange because that makes it sound like I'm there all the time. I'm not actually living inside my website. That'd be kind of weird, wouldn't it? Like just living in a website, kind of like in a van down by the river or something. Anyway, I promise that's not the case right here. Ladies and gentlemen, if there were space in this website to live, I would definitely be housing rabbits or something instead. That was weird. Now no one's going to visit this website. I must have smoked the really good stuff before I got to this intro. Go take a look at Fumidoro.com. Contact Fumidoro right there. We have a Discord we have lots of fun at. You can email me if you have any questions, comments, concerns. I got some strains if you guys would like to take a look at genetic preservation kits. They are often called. Morgana is a big favorite. Lime River Rose, another favorite. Another one I like is Black Prince Ruby. There's a couple special deals on the top right there. 3 packs. So, ladies and gentlemen, take a look. Thank you.
It's got some super great seeds. I know a lot of people that are killing it with them. I haven't had a chance to grow any yet, but I've been running around a lot and haven't had the time. But I definitely have some people that I want to get some seeds for out here for this, especially this larger grow that we're working on. That we're starting.
It'd be fun to see like a big old field of Morgana, all the
Right?
freaking beautiful colors.
We can definitely do an acre or two of it. We have plenty of room.
Cool.
We're doing quite a few acres, so it'll be fun.
That's what I hear.
But alrighty, guys, you guys can find me at Potent Ponics on SoundCloud, iTunes, all the things, Spotify. We're not pulling our stuff from Spotify. I just want to say that.
Oh, because of George.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
We're not.
Technically, I'm not either, I guess. So apparently,
Young,
I guess I've made my call. I haven't really thought about it that deeply, I have to be honest. I'm not a big fan of Joe Rogan anymore. I used to be a fan. I thought he was hilarious. His comedy was hilarious and stuff, but I'm not a big fan anymore. But I'm probably
I think Joe Rogan's still better and more interesting to listen to than Neil Young.
I can't really argue with that. I have to be frank. At the same time, I still wouldn't listen to Joe Rogan. But anyway, it is what it is.
Alrighty. On that note, we'll catch you guys next week. And again, we're going to have an episode on Thursday. There's a small chance if I have no internet or something like that down in Puerto Rico that it's going to be a problem. If not, I will see you guys maybe the following week, or as soon as I get back, we'll get him on and maybe do 2 episodes that following week just to catch up. So.
Sounds good.
Alrighty, and then also we won't have an episode the last week of this month on the 24th. We won't have one because I will be traveling and doing the regen thing, so I just won't have time to do one. But maybe we'll do a quick live or something with a bunch of the people hanging out.
That'd be fun. Yeah, man. We'll impromptu interview or something.
All right, guys, take it easy. Peace.
Adios.